I'm your host, Bradley Martin, and this is Clearing the Way, a resource for small business owners.
Hello, humans. I am your host, Bradley Martin, and this is Clearing the Way, a resource for small business. I talk with sales and HR experts, other small business owners, and anyone else that can provide you with information to clear your way to success. Sorry for the nasally voice today. I am obviously a bit sick. I've had an interesting couple of days. My eye swelled up the Wednesday before Thanksgiving because I forgot that I was allergic to raw carrots. So that was pretty cool. That lasted for about 16 hours. If you're watching the YouTube video or if you're listening, I'm going to put a photo in for the YouTube video. So you can see that. And then that was followed the next day by a bit of a sore throat, and I'm still a little stuffy. So that's been pretty cool. I hope everybody else had a marvelous Thanksgiving and a successful Black Friday or Small Business Saturday or Cyber Monday, whatever it was that you participated in or didn't participate in. I just hope you had a nice weekend. If you need help preparing for another community event like that in the future, then go ahead and check out the YouTube channel, the Clearing the Way YouTube. It'll be linked below. But I put out a video the Thursday before Thanksgiving, so 2 weeks ago, on just a couple things to think about before you, before an event like that. So might be good to take a look at before your next event. But yeah, that's all. That's all the housekeeping for the day. So today's topic, websites. Do you actually need one? That's the question. I have some questions and some thoughts to walk you through determining whether or not you need one, and if so, when is it a good time to do that? So your situation is going to be different from everybody's, but obviously I just say that on every episode, but that is really true. But this should help to at least guide you in the right direction to understand when it is time, when you actually do need one, because everyone will push you to get one immediately. And maybe that is the best thing for you at the beginning, but as we talk through this, maybe you'll realize that you don't have to have one at the beginning. I tried to organize all of these different topics and thoughts and questions in order of importance, but there's a lot of overlap, and they kind of they all relate to each other. So it's kind of all over the place. I'm sorry. So to answer the question, do you need one? Let's just get right to it. The answer is probably yes. Probably yes at some point. But you probably don't need one as soon as what you might think. So, do you need one to get started? Let's start there. Not having a website should not be a reason for you to not get started. Even if you're selling websites, even if you design websites, if you're starting with people that you know, if your first couple of projects are friends or family or somebody else that you already ever have a relationship with, you could probably get away with not having one. Is it better to do one for yourself? Yeah, probably in that case. It would be a little weird if you didn't have one, but you don't have to. You can absolutely get started. Don't put off projects because you don't have a website or you don't have business cards. Like this, all of these points are valid for any of those items that make the business feel official. You probably don't need it to start. So having a site will definitely help. It definitely will help, but it leads to credibility. It gives everyone a place to go for all of your information. They don't have to go searching through a bunch of different platforms to find all the information. They're not going to Facebook to find some and Instagram to find some and your YouTube page or this or this. it does give everybody a central point to contact you. That's all great. But what if let's just get to the top of the first point, which is budget. How much money do you have? How much money do you have to start this business? And we're talking like you're just getting started here. So do you have a couple $100, a couple $1,000? Look at that number and determine how big of an impact will a website actually have. Obviously, you're not going to know, but you can have a good idea of how important a website might be for your business, and determine whether or not if you're going to hire somebody to do that website, would that money be better spent on advertising or content creation or product development or system development or creating efficiencies? Like, would that money when you're starting be better spent on something else? I don't know. Maybe it would be. It depends on your situation. But if you only have a couple hundred or only have a couple $1,000, spending money to have somebody else build it, it might not be the most efficient use of that money. But you need to examine that, because maybe it would be. If you're, I'll get to the, we'll just get right to it now. If you're selling B2B, your customers are other businesses, it might be more important. It is more important. That credibility piece is pretty important when you're selling to other businesses. So unless you have another way to establish that credibility, that website might go a long way. Still not necessary. Maybe not necessary, but it's more likely that you would need one if that's your client. If your client is not, if you're B2C, you can probably get away with it for a little bit longer. I mean, the credibility thing, you can establish other ways. You can establish that on Facebook, on Instagram. If you're active on all these things and you're putting forward a good image and a good message and everything looks legit and you're not skeezy or scammy or any of those things, like that could work at the beginning. And actually you still might be able to do that on the B2B side. You just have to get really good at those things and really good at like the LinkedIn side. So if you can do all those same things, again, you're probably it's very likely that you will need a website eventually. And it might be within the first 6-12 months. But to get started, we're talking about here, do you actually need one? So let's get back to the budget thing. You've determined that you don't have the budget, you don't have the funds for it, or it would be more efficient, that money would be better spent on other things. Okay, great. So next up, do you still feel like you want a website, or it would be helpful, but you just don't have the funds? Can you do it yourself? Again, most likely, yes. If you have any computer skills, you can probably do it yourself. Is it going to be some dope site that everybody goes to and says, man, I love your website? Maybe not. Probably not. If you don't know what you're doing, it's going to be difficult to create that. But if you have a couple hours, you can probably create a site that is definitely good enough to get going. If you've determined you need one or you really want one, you can definitely get a site built that is good enough to get started for you on one of the builder platforms. Use a Wix, a Squarespace, a Shopify, a BigCommerce. One of those. Those are really the ones that I use. Using those they make it simple enough to and user friendly enough. I actually, quick note there, of Shopify and BigCommerce, I would say Shopify is definitely more user friendly. BigCommerce gives you a little bit potentially more flexibility, but Shopify is a little bit more intuitive. So if you were choosing between those two, I might lean more towards Shopify. But you can probably, if you know how to use a computer, not well, just know how to navigate the web and navigate the web. What am I, 100? Um, um, if you know how to navigate the web, you can probably create a site that is good enough to start. Again, those platforms they're all pretty intuitive. They all make it super simple. Like I said, you're not going to knock anybody's socks off. You're not going to create this thing that is some beautiful work of art, but you're going to create something that definitely gives you that notch in the credibility box. So, you can do a ton on those platforms if you know what you're doing. If you don't, it's fine. You can definitely use those to create something that is good enough for you to get rolling. And a quick note there, if you, in step 1, you've determined maybe don't need it, but you feel like you do still, that's okay. Like maybe there's that imposter syndrome, or maybe you've got something like that going on and it feels like that website will kind of make you feel more legit. That's fine. Make one. Like, don't put yourself in a bad situation paying thousands of dollars for a website, but spend the time and create one. If that's going to help you be more confident in your product, if that makes you more confident in pitching yourself, or talking to people about your services, like, that is important. If you're not confident in your product or service, it's going to be very, very difficult to sell it. People can feel that. So if you feel like you need that, that's fine. Like, go ahead and spend, like I just went over, like, you can definitely do it yourself. Give yourself a couple hours. You can create something that will be definitely a good representation of your product or service or company, whatever we want to call this. You can absolutely create one yourself.
This episode is brought to you by the City of Washington Citywide Development Corporation. The Washington CDC is here. I am here to help you with your small business, all of your problems, all of your challenges, all of your brainstorming. I'm here for you. It is free to you as long as you are a business within Washington or looking to move to Washington. If you're looking for space, if you, just need help brainstorming, if you just need help trying to figure out how to improve your business, reach out. That's what I'm here for. Now back to the show.
So next up, what type of product or service do you have? I said it already, but if you sell websites and don't have one, maybe that's a little weird. But if your first projects are with people that you know, you can probably get started without having your own. Probably start working on it quickly, but you can probably get by for a little bit. If you plan on selling a product online, your gut might be that you immediately need to have a place to sell those things. And I think in most cases, you probably want to move towards that. Like, eventually you do want your own place. You can cut out the middleman. You can cut out a lot of those extra things that are that you have to go through when you're using a third party. But if you don't have a ton of cash or if you think the money that you have would be better spent on other things, like getting product, like creating products, or whatever that is, if you think it would be better spent on that, then maybe it's a good idea to look at some of the other platforms that there are. So you've got the Amazons, you've got the eBays, you've got the Etsy's, all of those things. People are already going to those places. They don't have to discover you to discover your product. And unless you're killing it on social media or wherever, you're going to have to be spending some time and effort on other places to make this thing work. But unless you're killing it on those things, where are people finding you? If you go to a place that people are already going to search for products like yours, you don't have to. You can go where they're going. You don't have to pull them in. So now there are downsides to those platforms, you're going to have to pay for them. They're going to take some chunk. Anytime you're doing online sales, though, there's going to be something. Like you're going to pay the processor, you're going to pay somebody. But if you're using one of those platforms, there is going to be a fee associated with that. But that's why the goal is to eventually get your own thing. But to start, again, you don't have to use those things. If you don't have the money and you don't have the time, or you don't have the wherewithal to create your own site, use those things. Like, they're great platforms. That's why they're the biggest they're the biggest selling platforms in the world for a reason. People go there and people will buy from them. Do we want to get off of there? Sure. We want to eliminate those fees. We want to get our own audience. We want to drive our own drive people to our site. Absolutely. 100%. That should be our goal. But we don't have to do that at the beginning in most cases. So next up, what are your goals? So if this is just going to be a hobby, you have no intentions of doing this full time, maybe you can hold off a little bit longer on your site, and maybe you just never make one. Like, sure, you could just sell on Etsy forever. That's fine. You can be incredibly successful that way. And again, people are going to those places. So unless you can create enough of a following and enough of a reason for people to get off of those and go to your site, they're going to keep going to Etsy. They're going to keep going to Amazon. They're going to keep going to the other place, the eBay. They're going to go there because they're already going there. Those platforms are trusted. Unless you can create a reason for them to get off of those. And unless you can create that audience, they're probably going to want to go there. Now, again, if you can develop that loyal following, and it doesn't have to be, I guess this is a good point to say this, it doesn't have to be one or the other. You can have your own site and keep selling on those other things. Like, that would be a good idea. Be on as many places as possible. Start trying to drive people to your site, but obviously take the old clients, take the other business from those other platforms, because again, people are going there. They're going there for whatever the product is. So go to them. Go where they are. And if you want this thing to become a bigger company, like, again, I've said it several times, but we're probably going to need a website eventually. So if you want this thing to be more than just a hobby, you probably need a website eventually. Probably. So, I guess that's kind of, is that all the things to think about? Probably not. I mean, there's a lot of other things, and depending on the situation, like I've said at the beginning, like, depending on your situation, there's going to be a lot more to consider. But this at least gives you a framework to think about when it might be right. Like, don't let somebody just sell you on something. If you've got $1,000 to start this business and someone's going to charge you $500 to make a website, is that going to be the best use of that $500? You only have $1,000. Probably not. Probably not. Like, probably not. So just look at your situation and understand that there is a way to get started without having to have a website or have business cards or have any of those things. Like, will you not feel as good about it? Will you feel some type of way? Probably. That's all right. Like, get used to it. That's fine. Work towards the website, though. Work towards the business cards. But to get started, you don't need it, probably. So, obviously, a great website, it's going to help tell your story. It's going to tell your customers about your products and your services and all these things that you offer. And honestly, when you have your own place that people are going, you can cut out a lot of those middleman fees, those 10% fees, those 20% fees, whatever the fee is, you can cut those out. And obviously that's good for you. It increases your margins, it increases your profit, that is good for you. But But it's less important at the beginning than you might think, especially if you're selling something that people go other places for already. They feel like websites feel like this thing that you got to have at the beginning. It feels like every business needs one. And again, you do, but maybe not at the beginning. I've probably said that. I don't know. Get the counter on the screen. So I guess in closing, if you don't have the funds, don't feel like you have to force one. You can create a basic one on your own. If you can't do it, if you don't have the skills, you don't have the time, that's fine. Get started. Like, don't let a website, don't let business cards, don't let those things that feel like, oh, I'm not a legit business until I have these. Don't let those things be the reason that you don't get started. And when you get started, just know that you have to revisit those things maybe in a month, maybe in 3 months, maybe in 6 months, maybe in a year, whatever that is. Just whenever you get to a point where you're more comfortable, you have a little bit extra funds, now's the time. Or when you reevaluate and say, okay, maybe I have the same amount of money, but now I think that this would have a greater impact. Okay, now you've reevaluated and now it's time. Now it's time to jump into those things. Again, don't let these things be a reason that you don't get started. Okay, that's the episode. I hope next time I don't sound so horrendous, and I hope I'm not as stuffy, because that'll make me feel better. And if you like this episode, please share it with your friends. Share it with that friend that's thinking about getting started, but he's been bitching about whatever it is that is his reason that he's not getting started. Just share this with them. Like us on YouTube or subscribe. God, I feel like I'm 100 today. Like it on whatever you're listening to. Leave a review. That's super helpful. All of those things are helpful. Share it, like it, comment. Let me know what topics you'd like to have somebody else do the research for you for. That's what I'm here for. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And I will see you next time. See ya.
I'm your host, Bradley Martin, and this is Clearing the Way, a resource for small business owners.